What's going on, Tamers? It is me, Guy, who honestly outside of Bandai employees might be the hardest working man at Digimon. If only they knew. Can I be real? Be real, son. I might be harder working than some of those folks too. I'm exhausted, man. I need a nap. So the week 5 results for the BT11 Dimensional Phase tournament results are in, and honestly the results are kind of light for the week. The reason for that is that last week was Halloween, and as a result of that, Bandai was running a special promotion where instead of having the normal tamer battles for the week, there would be special like Halloween Cup battles where players would run like decks that have all purple cards in them. They could be other colors, but mostly purple cards. For that reason, a lot of the tournament results that I found were actually a result of that Halloween Cup and not actually their tamer battles. Although there are some tamer battles, and we'll cover that in this video. If you are interested in the BT11 Halloween Cup, so to speak, I'll be doing a separate video on that. That one's a bit of a fun one. We'll talk about some of the decks there, some of the cool takeaways. I think there were some really neat innovations that came out of that. So I think it's still worth talking about. For this video, however, we're going to talk about just the meta decks, all of the events that were open to all color decks and all kinds of decks with no restriction. We're going to go over the results for the week. We're also going to talk about some of the key takeaways from the decks that we did see, as well as take a look at a couple of decks that might be useful to you guys over in the English side of the game. As we take a look at the actual results for the week, it is no surprise that, again, Black Mervamon is #1 in the meta at this point. The red decks have really overtaken the black decks at this point, and I think that we could safely say that the red version of Black Mervamon X is the build that you're going to go for if you're looking for the strongest version of the deck. One interesting point to make is that while Black Mervamon X is rated the best deck right now, in previous weeks it had about 20 plus wins, and this week only had about 10 or so, if memory serves me correctly. I don't know if that reduction in wins is a result of the Halloween Cup that happened alongside the Tamer battles, or if it is a result of the decks lower on this list just performing better. We'll have to wait for subsequent weeks to see what the results look like to actually make a conclusion there. Speaking of the lower decks on this list, we saw in the past couple weeks that Sunrise, Buster, as well as Shadowverse X4 got hit by the restriction list. However, for Japan, those restrictions don't take effect until the end of this month. Whereas I believe the folks over on the Ian side of the game, if you're watching, you guys are going to get hit with those within like a couple of days from the release of this video. But I will say that some of the players have already started experimenting with the Shadowverse decks and the XrosHeart decks with those restrictions in place already before they even like officially enacted. And as a result, we see that the X7 version of Shadowverse and XrosHeart is doing better than the X5 version. X5 is really trying to like hobble together something to make sense. Of course, they're running the single copy of Sunrise Buster. They're also running the single copy of X4 Shadowverse. They're also trying to add in things like Mervamon to maybe try to help with the tempo of the deck. Now that X4 is gone, but they haven't really been seeing a lot of success. Another takeaway that pops up over the course of the week is that the difference between these rookie decks and these in-training decks I think is pretty clear when you take a look at how the decks are structured. We see decks in the rookie category like Grandis, Ulforce Digimon, Jessamon X doing well, Examon, outside of X5, which we already talked about, Mastamon, and also Blue Flare. I think that all of these decks separate themselves from those lower in-training decks that only got a single win over the course of the week because they have two factors that I think are very important. The first is that they have incredibly powerful boss monsters with either some form of protection or so big they're hard to get over. And the second part is that these decks all have incredible draw engines of some kind. Let's go over a couple of them together. The first one, Grandis, being able to create an 18k bug that is nigh unkillable in the current metagame, and then back that up with the X antibody engine means that this deck is fast, and out of the gate it murders Black Mervamon X. The second is the Ulforce Digimon deck, which at pretty much every level, as well as tamers included, draws cards. So being able to find the cards you need very quickly is actually pretty easy for this deck. Next up is Jessamon, which I think needs really no introduction. Every level 3, the option cards as well as all the Sistermon basically help this deck search out for its pieces. And if 25% of the deck, 30% of the deck finds the other parts of the deck that you need, then I think you're in a pretty good position. Examon benefits from having basically all of its level 3s search for cards or draw cards on play. So you could basically find any card in the deck off of any draw or any search. Additionally, it also takes advantage, or maximum advantage, of the Davis Tamer being able to grab a blue and a green card off of pretty much every single Davis Tamer you play, which makes it fantastic and allows you to get the 3 memory every single turn. For Purple-Yellow Mastamon, the Gatomon from the starter deck, being able to find a purple and yellow card off the draw, as well as reduce the distribution cost for basically every level 5 in the deck, also should not be overstated. And then Blue Flare, most of its boss monsters having access to Armor Purge, which means that most of its swings are going to go through for those +1 security checks or the multiple swings that it can make. On top of that, they have powerful searches like Blue Flare Memory Boost, as well as things like the Decker Greymon, as well as the Greymon level 4 to search out all the cards you're going to need over the course of the game. And so that brings me to my last point, which is that all these decks that we see in the in-training category, which only have a single win over the course of the week, suffer from the fact that they either can't search fast enough to outpace the other decks in the rookie category or above, or their boss monster just isn't simply strong enough. I think the one exception I might make for this entire category is War Greymon X Antibody. And I think the reason that we're not seeing this deck do better is because most of these players who would play this deck are probably playing Black War Greymon X Antibody already, so... But when I take a look at other decks like simply Mervamon or Beelzemon, you know, trying to discard cards, sometimes you feel like it's a little gacha-ish, trying to get the right cards that come up. And then other decks like D-Brigade, Lilith Loop, OTK Dorbrickmon, which I'm absolutely going to take a look at because I know you guys just got your hands on EX2, and I think this is the funniest deck, but also a pretty fun deck to build and try out. And then alongside that, you know, Gabubon trying to put like Leomon in there to get a little bit faster card draw and also some more resources and memory. And you know, the list just goes on and on. And while I think that these decks are fine in their own right, I believe that the one thing that's going to separate them from the other decks that you see above them is that their consistency and being able to get their pieces fast enough, as well as getting out their boss monster to win, is going to be a bit of a challenge. I know that the meta is different in the sense that in Japan it is best of 1, whereas in America it is a best of 3. But I think when you have a strong draw engine, which allows you to more consistently find your pieces, and a stronger boss monster, which allows it to stay alive and potentially win the game faster, you can one and done somebody, but over the course of time, you're going to see less consistent results overall, and I think that's what we're seeing. So as we take a look at some of the decks that I want to showcase for the week, the first one I want to show up is XrosHeart X7 with the restriction lists added in. So we can see this deck only has a single copy of Sunrise Buster. It also has only a single copy of Shoutmon X4. While I don't personally think that you need Shoutmon X4 for this X7 deck, this person does run it, and it's still a fantastic card to use regardless. You can also see that he runs the single copy of the Shoutmon X5. Just having that nice, 2 security attack pressure is always good to keep your opponent on their toes, and also just close out games a little bit faster while you're waiting on your X7 pieces. And what I think is truly interesting here is the fact that he has replaced what would normally be the other 2 Sunrise Busters in the deck with some pretty devastating options instead. The first one being Grandel's Soul, which is really nice because if you do have the green card on the board, and you're probably going to have it in the form of Zenjiro here, and you have the rest of Digimon, they somehow live through their security swing, you're going to be able to remove a Digimon on the board for cheaper. And then finally, there are a ton of ways that you can remove a Digimon, and right now, as far as the game's concerned, there's actually some defenses against being able to be removed. However, one of the defenses that doesn't really exist out there is the fact that if you reduce the Digimon's DP to 0, it's usually just gone. For that reason, we do see the single copy of Breath of Wyvern, and while expensive, it does allow you to remove pretty much anything you need at a moment's notice. I mentioned before that X5 had been experimenting with just using Mervamon instead. Here's a list that does that and also conforms to the restriction list updates. We see the single copy of the Shoutmon X4. We also see the couple of copies of Mervamon here, who does slot in pretty well with the rest of the deck in my opinion. We also see, strangely enough, the Shoutmon King version, which is, I think, a card that really hasn't seen much play at all since it's released, at least on the Japanese side of the game. It's hard to see this card here, but it's actually 2 copies of the Ignitemon, so just keep that in mind, just to get that Digicross with your Mervamon there. And then finally, it puts its foot on the gas pedal by, instead of running any sort of like removal options, instead giving you access to more memory using the Blinding Ray option card for 0. You spend your security, or if you don't have any security, you just get free +2 memory off every security you drop. So, you know, if you want to have those really big turns where you either want to play a Mervamon out, or you need a little bit more memory to make that last swing to close out the game, Blinding Ray is a fantastic pick. I know that you folks are going to get your hands on some EX3 cards over on the English side of the game very soon. For that reason, I want to show off a really cool Examon list here that I've seen. Look, let's keep it a buck. If you're running Examon, you're willing to spend. And so I don't feel that bad recommending you an Examon deck that also has 2 copies of Dexmon in it, just because if you got the Examon, you probably also got the Dexmon too, or the Death Exmon, excuse me. While this list is a little updated for the BT11 meta, I can say that the only card you really need to worry about here is the Dracomon, the BT11 Dracomon itself, where until this card comes out, you can just swap it out for some floodgates. For example, you can get the Shakomon or a Madoki Betamon or a mixture of both of them, just so you can control your opponent's side of the board a bit more. This deck does also run some pretty expensive but also powerful removal options in the form of Giga Death. While Giga Death is a, again, great option to check in security, I don't think you're going to be able to use it over the course of the game reliably. For that reason, you could either, downgrade this to something like a Mega Death, or in my opinion, I think it's just okay to run something like a blue memory boost or a green memory boost. And the last deck that I want to take a look at today is honestly a little silly. It's kind of funny, a little memey, but it's a OTK Dorbic. I know you folks are going to get your hands on some EX3 cards very soon, or already have your hands on some of them, and this deck is just pretty funny. Just being able to hard play your Dorbic-mon and then just put a bunch of, you know, Dragon, Asor, or Ceratopsian cards up under it. And it just makes use of the fact that most of those cards have Security Attack +1 or the ability to restand at things like Jazarihimon, the Master Tyrannomon, Volcdramon, Majiramon, and then things like the level 4 Greymon as well with Security Attack +1. So you can like stack all these up under it and basically just like swing for game and then use the Majiramon unsuspend ability to swing again to just win. Admittedly, it has probably the most fantastic draw engine that Red could ask for in the promotion Guidomon plus Guidomon X Antibody. It's kind of hard to see these, but this is what these are. Guidomon, the promotion ones that draw 2 on swing, and then the Guidomon X Antibody that allows you to also draw because of evolution. Outside of that, it also has the 4 copies of Fireball to also draw 2 cards for 2 memory, and then 4 copies of the BT4, I think it is, Heir of Dragons card, which allows you to draw 2, and then if you have a Greymon or Dramon Digimon on the board, at least something that's 3,000 or less. So that draw engine alongside the power that Dorbic allows you in being able to basically nuke a Digimon on the field that's in his way whenever you play him, and then just swing for game immediately is pretty funny. If you've got some time, you got a couple of Dorbic mons, definitely give this one a shot. Admittedly, the Guidomon engine is a little expensive, so if you don't have Guidomon, try something else. I don't really know. Maybe Agumon X Antibody, although that's not much better. I guess it does allow you to switch for some of the Greymons in the deck. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you this is a tier 1 deck, but I will say that it's a pretty fun deck to use, and if you're just trying to have a good time, this is definitely one that I recommend. And so that's going to be it for the Week 5 BT11 Dimensional Phase Japanese tournament results. Let me know what decks you guys are interested in trying for BT11 when it drops on the English side of the game in the comments below. Also, let me know what EX3 decks you guys are excited to try out in the comments below as well. If you're not up to speed on what the cards are for the actual Draconic War set soon to be released in the English version of the game, go over and check out my full set review I've done on my channel as well. It's a little long, but it does cover all the cards and all the scenarios you're going to need to know about for that set. Also, if you're a fan of these meta report videos, go ahead and check out some of the meta reports that I did for the actual EX3 set when it released here in Japan. There's a ton of information about the decks you're likely going to see, as well as the week-to-week updates for those decks. Anyway, folks, I'm going to get out of here. Do me a favor, before you get out of here, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.